Like, are we just gonna wait for him to notice?
Yeah, I was just gonna. How long is it gonna take?
I was like, I have 2 small children. I have a long practice of like staring contests and quiet game. I could do this for a while. So nobody else is going to have fun, but I'm going to win. That's the important.
Right.
So, what are we talking about?
We are talking about a movie from 1956, another oldie, but I think a goodie, called The Killing, from director Stanley Kubrick, starring what's his face, who's also the crazy general in Dr. Strangelove. If anyone's ever seen it.
I watched the wrong movie. Just kidding.
Oh.
Yes,
I like
and
it.
This is your submission for
my submission for perfect movie. Yeah, I think it's beautifully tense. It's interesting. It has the non-linear editing, the non-linear storytelling. You wonder kind of why it makes some of the early choices that it does, and at the end, I think it totally makes sense with the weird narration at the beginning, at the ending. Makes perfect sense of it. And this is total spoilers, by the way. It's a phenomenal movie, and I think even knowing the ending, it works.
I appreciate you covering the spoilers topic, but I think even the strictest of standards puts 1956 on the outside of who can be mad about spoiling a movie. So
it's still courteous.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely appreciate it.
So I don't know.
Defend yourself a bit more before I go on the attack, please.
Oh no!
Yeah,
okay.
So the director's a millennial, dude. You already knew what you were getting in for. So.
It has a certain way of presenting its characters. The characters are in certain types, but I think those types are appropriate to the hard-boiled film noir, gumshoe kind of storytelling, the pulp storytelling of the 20s and 30s and 40s, and it's drawing on that and a film noir influence to create a very tense heist movie, and you never quite know how it's going to turn out, how it's going to end, and one thing leads to another, and you see the chain of cause and effect very clearly in this when plans go awry. And there's almost kind of a moralistic overtone towards people meeting their end based on who they are at the very beginning, and the choices they make because of who they are leads directly to their downfall. So I think one of the clearest examples, and the earliest example of a character death is, well, that the one guy who snipes the racehorse, right? That is kind of, I think, a kind of a beautiful little a preview of what's going to happen to the rest of the characters, because of the choice he makes to get the bothersome guard out of his life. It ends up making it impossible for him to get on. He just dies, and you see that repeat itself with the collective of guys, then the meeting to split up the winnings, and then of course the main character who's the mastermind behind this. So I think there's a lot of misdirection and kind of multi-level storytelling, which is really interesting to see how all of this fits and why all of this matters and why each of these people needs to be part of the conspiracy, even a little part that they contribute. Even though if only one guy does the heist proper itself, there's just a couple of people in on it just very slightly. And there's so many places where it could have gone wrong and didn't. And there's just one or two places where it did go wrong and it completely upended the whole thing. So I think it's a masterful telling of this heist story. I think the effect is that it's very tense. A very good movie.
I was bored.
You were bored?
Oh yeah.
How were you bored?
I was bored. Like I didn't. So a lot of the setup was, I just kind of felt like in that section of like they're getting all of the people and like they're doing the son of a bitch I'm in type thing. Like I was like, okay, shorten it. I'm done. I'm bored. get to the meat of the story. It's like I don't need to know the conversation with the Russian guy to know that he's in on it later. Not quite as much, or like some of that could have been shortened because I was just like they're like showing all of that and having a narration that was also trying to info dump at me, and then having the characters info dump during the things. It's just like
Really? Okay.
It really is an old storytelling versus new storytelling, right? Because modern audiences need the action to stay in their seats, right? You know,
I mean, I don't necessarily need action, but I guess I needed something that was just more gripping. But I wasn't. I was just not gripped. I was like, I did have the sensation of like, wow, heist movies have come a long way. And it's just trying to give it a grain of salt that way. We're just like, okay,
man. It can.
Okay. But then when it got less linear, I was confused until it worked itself out. It could have been more non-linear and I could have understood it better, or it could have been more linear and I could have understood it better. But what I got was a jumbled mess.
Really? A jumbled mess? Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, I don't follow you down that path, actually. Like, could you give us an example of like something you were confused by or didn't follow?
It's not that I didn't follow it. It's that I was taken out of the story I was trying to get into by being confused because it went from linear to nonlinear and back. Like if they had, like, I can watch Pulp Fiction and understand the whole thing and be fine because there's some highlighting of all of it's nonlinear and you're piecing it together. But when it's going linear to nonlinear without an explanation, it's just like, did the stream just fuck up because now I'm watching the same scene again? And
is that what you were talking about in the pre-show where you were like the trivia kind of reinforced your feelings on that? Because,
yeah, so
you know, they talk about how the studio made him film it linearly and then nobody liked it anyway, so he just reverted it.
Yeah, so he had done it non-linear and people were confused and didn't like it, and so then he did it linearly and people were even more confused, and so he put it out the original way, and then they forced him to do the narration, which he didn't like, and I kind of agree the narration was a bad idea, but if the narration was needed, then it's like something else went wrong and that's trying to mask it. The editing is the problem of this movie. It's the same thing, that problem with Shadow of a Doubt. Maybe editing has just come like miles and miles away, but that
I thought, okay,
like the characters were fine.
No, I was just gonna say on the narration, like I thought the narration was very Police Squad at first, and so like I kind of came into it thinking, oh, is this gonna be funny? You know, or something along those lines. And then just like, I waited like 30 minutes for a joke, I think, that just never came, you know.
It's
because of the narration. Like,
definitely not a funny style story.
So.
At one of the trivia points says that because Kubrick hated the narration, that the narrator was often either saying something that was a mistaken or outright lie, which I didn't catch any of those. But maybe I had already checked out by that point if he had said something that was a lie.
Yeah, I don't know. That trivia point confused me too. I was like, I don't recall anything that he was blatantly false on. Or
a lot of it was just like, well, this dude got to the bus station at 4:30 p.m. It's like, okay.
Yeah, right.
I don't need to know what time he got there to be able to see that he got there.
Well, it's important to know how precise it was, right? Because then you understand George's whole thing about like everything goes like clockwork until it's time to pay us. You know, so I can kind of see that still paying off a little bit,
but I don't remember the narrator saying what time everyone else was arriving. If I remember right, it was just that one dude getting the box at the bus station, getting on the bus, going to work like he always does. That part could have been clockwork without it needing to be labeled, and it wasn't time stamped for any of the other characters and their actions as things were going. Until, I mean, yes, the point of everything goes fine until it's time to pay us. That was a good line and it's a good point thing for that character to make. It's just the middle and how to get to that point was not well done.
For Johnny's arc, you know, towards the end, like they actually mentioned the timing multiple times, right? You know, like
it did say he was 15 minutes late.
He got here at this time. He got here at this time. He hit the car when he was supposed to, but there was traffic, so he was running 15 minutes behind.
Yeah.
So when he got to the place, he was still 15 minutes behind, and everybody was already dead. Spoiler alert. So, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I followed that much, but yeah, some of the setup, it's not. There's nothing exciting about it, right? He talks to an old friend who he knows he can trust, who's Russian, who can start a riot. And I mean, he's not even as eloquent as the last Avatar. Like, hey, you guys want to start a riot? Then you've got the shooter, right? So he pays him a ton of money because of his skill, I guess, or something like that. But things start to go sideways. But yeah, like we didn't necessarily need to know beyond, here's a portfolio or whatever of all of these dudes, and so like. And I mean, even still, like you wouldn't do that because the nature of the operation they were doing, they were trying to compartmentalize, right? So, just know we're going to have a guy cause a scene. We're going to have a different guy cause a different kind of scene. And you guys need to be doing this thing at this time, so.
I think the point of some of the, I took the point of some of the narration, what it adds to the movie, though I didn't like it, as being sort of maybe what the prosecution would say at the trial or something, maybe almost a foretelling of, this is how it's going on, this is what's happening. It's kind of a reconstruction.
That could be a really interesting framing, but if they're going to go for that theme, they need to do that from the beginning and like full on.
Oh yeah, or have it at the end, because I think part of what makes it so tense is is he caught or is he not? And of course, with the end, it's just so heartbreaking. You want to root for the guy. I wanted to root for the guy. I wanted him to get away with it.
Right.
But that's not the kind of story this is. And so this movie definitely made me feel things. And so that's one of the things I think that makes it such a great movie. I understand it's not your favorite, or and you didn't like it, you thought it was boring, you felt it was boring. But in my experience, it's one of the things that makes a great movie.
Right.
And I think we can agree on that.
It is, yes. If you have an emotional response to something, that matters.
Yeah.
I didn't. I mean, it's not like I couldn't connect to the characters. The characters were well done. I think they were not used to the fullest extent that they could be. Like the wife, whatever her name was, her being like the femme fatale character.
So horrible.
But I kind of expected more of her after the setup of her deliberately involving herself and like she's doing shit. I expected her to subvert the whole thing more than just sending her boyfriend with the gun and then that's all over in 30 seconds.
I think what we're supposed to get from it is not just that he's the boyfriend, but that he's a cop.
He was a cop?
That's what I got. I got from that.
Did I miss that?
Oh no, I just thought that's okay. I just figured, I didn't catch that he was a cop. I just assumed from the way he was dressed. Towards the end when he showed up with a partner, with a buddy.
Yeah, I mean, he had a partner, but I was thinking more of the like 1940s style gangsters instead of cops.
Oh, that might have been it. That might have been it too. Sure. Yeah. I thought that with one of the points of the movie was how, even as precise it was, there's just a couple little things ruin it. So the horseshoe. Even without the horseshoe, all it takes is that little dog that woman has. It's set up and pays off.
Towards the end, I was more like, so I was also rooting for the guy, right? And then like retrospectively, I was like, it's a 1956 movie. That there probably were like all of this bullshit behind the scenes of like the Hollywood censors wouldn't have allowed something like that, even if he wanted to tell that story. So it just wouldn't have even been in the cards, because there are several other old-timey movies like this where it's like, you got to change the ending because the bad guys can't win. But outside of that, like I was annoyed to the point of almost being enraged about all the stupid little shit that brought down such a well-crafted plan, right? Yeah. Where it was just like, George obviously is a worm and they really should have known that, and his wife. So they should have figured something, right? I don't know. And then the
locked
dog,
her in a cellar for a few days to make sure she couldn't go talk to someone who's going to miss her. She's a housewife that goes nothing, doesn't drinks.
Director. Not every movie can be dark. Okay.
I was just like,
this is a pretty dark movie.
No, I'm saying literally dark. That sort of shit would happen in that show. So you can't solve all of your problems. Director, I can't believe I have to say this. You can't solve all of your problems by locking women in the cellar. Okay. I'm just going to stop you there. Okay, continue.
It's like
it puts the lotion on its skin, or it doesn't get $100,000.
oh my God, tell that to the woman, and then she would shut up and go with you.
Right.
I mean, they know that she was such a risk, when they know that he was such a risk, and they have that moment in the beginning. It's like, well, I could kill you and shut you up, or do something else, or just like make sure she's not there to do more. They had the opportunity, and then they didn't take it. So I kind of like, I have less sympathy for when she does fuck it up for them, because they didn't do the thing that they should have done to protect themselves. Although I get that maybe they don't want to beat a woman to death or lock her away in a cellar for a few days because they were better people than that. But it's just, do something. Try to do something.
Send her out of town.
Yeah.
At least fucking like
he doesn't have the wherewithal to get that done, though. You know, he's such not just a worm.
No, the smart one. The
No,
one that
was Johnny.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
No,
Okay,
not the husband. Yeah, her manipulating him was fun to watch, and him trying to figure it out or be his own person, notwithstanding that. Like, the characters were well done, but some of the just like the plotting and the decision making, like Johnny could, like, he had the wherewithal of like, you were here to listen in on. He explained everything, and now you're a risk, and then he let her go.
Right.
I'm trying to think of where this was in real. You mentioned the thing about the censorship and all that. I'm trying to think of. This is pretty late in that period of the code, of the Hays Code, so it's pretty late. So. Yeah, I want to say certainly by the 60s you start having that sort of thing subverted, but film noir in the late 40s, and there's a lot of very, very dark films. The Third Man, Dark Passage. There's a lot of very miserable films, or a lot of very dark, miserable things happen, and like Shadow of a Doubt, the bad guys, even if they're protagonists, if they lose, it's only by very little bit at the very, very end. So I don't know if this is, and I don't think this ending is unearned, because I think there's a lot of this movie is about how meticulous it is, and how, despite however meticulous your plans are, a little tiny little thing will make the entire thing go awry. Any one of those.
I feel like the moral of the story was, if you're going to run away with up to $2 million, make sure you buy the good luggage that's not going to fall apart.
Right. Well, I mean, that could be part of it too. Like, yeah, he had to buy the biggest, wasn't necessarily the best suitcase.
Yeah, like, so he gets it, but then he can't close it, and then or something. It's just
talk about modern changes, right? So I'm watching it go down the conveyor belt, and I'm thinking, oh, no fucking way, dude. No, even better than that. By today's modern standards, if they thought for an instant that it might break open in flight, they would have saran wrapped it. Because we've had our luggage saran wrapped at times, because we've had it like full to bursting or whatever. And so I'm like, oh, God damn it. Like, this is another thing that like wouldn't happen in modern times because saran wrap or whatever.
I was wondering, like, as he was like not wanting to have it checked through the plane, because it's been shown like, well, it's going to fall apart, or he's just paranoid and things like that. It's like, is he going to ask for a thing of duct tape to like try to wrap it around, and then that gets attention because a cop will go like, why would you be duct taping something? And that's how he gets caught.
Well, and like thinking about it now too, right? Like, they had belts and shit that you could like cinch down your luggage and whatever. Yeah. But I think one of the scenes, like when he dumps all the money in and he closes it and locks it, I get the impression like the locks were pretty flimsy in that scene, right? So it's another one where it's like a little bit foreshadowed, because he seems to be struggling with them a little bit, and I'm like, did that lock just pop open after he locked it? You know, like. Right. So you're just like, oh shit, that doesn't seem good. And in the moment, I thought he was stashing it, so he was going to hide it and come back for it later. And then you see him at the airport with it, and you're like, oh shit, you know. And it's going down the conveyor belt, and you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I was like, oh, it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I saw it go down the conveyor belt. Oh no, is that when it falls open? I'm pretty sure something falls open or something. Oh no, it's going to fall open. And then, but it just very slowly keeps moving down the conveyor belt, and nothing happens. And I was pulling out my hair, even though nothing was happening, because there's that dramatic irony there that this movie does so well, I think. I don't know. Well, and another example of this kind of the bait and switch stuff that Kubrick does in this. This is a very little thing. When Johnny's actually doing the robbery, and he tells the guys, "Get in that room. I'm going to start firing in like 20 seconds or something."
Right.
And then he doesn't. You know,
Right.
so I was expecting.
Well, he just wanted them away from the door,
oh,
hiding.
for sure.
You know, I'm sure.
Which was clear. Which way is it going to go? And you know, he just says that, and then he doesn't do it.
I think. To me, the bigger twist, like setting that up and a couple other scenes, was the fact that he made such a big deal about the shotgun could clear a room in 20 seconds or whatever, right? And so he's basically got this fully automatic shotgun that he's taking with him. And so when they're like, "Oh, Johnny's finally here," and the door kicks open, that's when I was expecting something like Johnny was going to shoot up the room and make off with the money or something along those lines, right? But then it was the boyfriend, and I was like, "Oh shit, I forgot about him," because I was thinking about Johnny's automatic shotgun or whatever, you know. So, but yeah, because there's a couple of scenes where I thought they would use that. Sorry, go ahead.
The death scenes, they've also come a long way in recent decades. I don't want to be uncharitable. It's like they're in the 50s, but there's people like there's a sound and then someone grabs their abdomen and then they fall over. It's like there is not a drop of blood on that person.
Right. Yeah.
It happened like 4 times. It's just like
the shooter was the first one where I was like, where's the exit wound? You know,
exactly. It was like there's
wife,
nothing.
You know, like yeah.
And
that's
then like
that's almost sort of like complain about special effects though, because I don't think, or like in a stage play you wouldn't see an exit wound either. Right. I think this is just sort of.
You might find like an image of blood that they might put on them to make it look like there was something. In stage plays, they will use props like that.
Yeah, and stage plays got way bigger constraints than a Hollywood movie.
Yes.
Not that this one was terribly high budget by their standards or whatever, right? But it does come off very college-esque, like in that regard, right? Where it's just like. They didn't have the budget / put in.
I don't want to ruin my clothes because I have to wear it to school the next day.
Right.
It's just like when the boyfriend did show up with the shotgun and there was like 2 shots and now 5 people are dead. It's like that.
Yeah. I mean, I know I was actually surprised because it seemed like a bunch of people hit the deck. And then when he comes out, like he shoots like 5 shots, and then you like pan out, and it like in that scene, I gave him credit because it felt like it was from George's perspective, and he was clearly out of his fucking depth at that moment. Like he basically he fires 2 shots, and then he panics, and then he pulls the gun into his chest and fires like 2 more, and then you get it from like his perspective and like, oh fuck, everybody's dead. And he like shambles out of the apartment.
The switch to his point of view was really cool.
Killed everybody. I figured George was the one who killed everybody because he was so
right. Because he panicked. You know, yeah.
I it's. I think you can still participate and get into the story without seeing blood splatter and exit wounds. I think that's sort of a window dressing for the dramatic moment, which is multiple shots, everyone's dead, and one guy's just going to be stumbling out to go confront his wife, right?
The director is saying if it's going to be a perfect movie, she wants it. So she wants it splatter.
I
mean, they should have, like, at least in the ones where it was very visible, they should have had an exit wound or an entrance wound or something. At least the dude that was shooting the horse and the wife, they should have had something visible.
Right.
The rest of them, it can just be generic.
I mean, how hard is it to poke a stick through the jacket and put a little ketchup on him? You know,
exactly.
Like that's kind of the thing. Like, we don't necessarily need to see his entrails become his extrails or something, you know. But you know, like they at least splattered the crew, you know, in the apartment with whatever at the time, you know. And George has got it across his face, which I had just assumed like George hadn't been hit, but then he just kind of like falls over at the end. So I'm like, did he bleed out? Is he passed out? Like, you know,
is he having a heart attack?
You know, yeah, right. So,
what do you guys think about how this was shot, though? Like individual shots with the camera placement, the lighting, the mood, the atmosphere.
I don't have that kind of eye usually, right? Like I can see some scenes, like we were talking about the transition with George, where it goes from the kind of panorama shot to his perspective. that shit's cool and obvious sometimes, but there are other times where people are like, this is the first time that a sky crane was used in a movie in 1924 or whatever. I don't give a shit.
So
like
when it was first introducing Johnny and he was walking like through his entire apartment and like you can see that line is like that. I can see how that might have been really special at the time, but there was a lot of a feeling of clutter to it because of how much they had on the set to make it look lived in, I think. And so it's like it was more annoying than it was special, but I've seen it done better since. So I can see that they might have been trying something there.
That's the problem I have with going over some of the old movies, right? It's like you're always like, well, so and so did it better. I'm like, well, yes, but there's also 60 years of improvement since then, and the culture has shifted for 60 years.
I'll try to give it credit for being in the 50s, but it's just like it. That was one of the only times when the set didn't feel like just really, really small. All of the rest of them felt like very contained and very like I guess low budget, but it's like very small rooms. And so even when they were like in the when he was shooting the horse, you could see some like whatever they would have a green screen at the time of like the movie is clearly playing and then he's doing a thing in front of it and it felt kind of odd and weird looking.
Right. Yeah. Don't let the director watch Die Hard 3 is part of the point, because Die Hard 3 was one of the first movies that I saw where like with a more modern lens where I'm like the entire plot of this movie unravels in the modern time because
of
the
cell
entire
phones
thing
or something?
the entire thing would come crashing down because of a cell phone. So the director can't put herself in that time frame.
I can remember a time without cell phones. I can remember like a time of only having payphones, if only that. But it's just like there's a difference between the technology of the time and the what they can accomplish with the technology when they were filming it. Like Chinatown is set in 1947. I have no issues with just accepting 1947 restraints or anything, but the quality of the film and the setting makes it feel more expansive than it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, like I wanted to hear Ben. We've been a little adversarial with some of his picks in the past.
The older movies.
I didn't hate it. I thought it was perfectly okay. I see it as foundational. I wasn't necessarily bored, even though it was like 1:30 in the morning and I had everything stacked up against going on here. But like, I think it was good. Like part of some of the points I wanted to bring up too is like it's been referenced and iterated on a little bit by several other great films that I've enjoyed. Right, so you've got like Reservoir Dogs and the non linear stuff. Like has definitely been used by Tarantino, right? Then you have just these little nuggets of reference from Terminator 2 and the flower box. I'm going to store a shotgun in a flower box, or the clown mask in Dark Knight, right? Those are neat to me, and I see those. I like. Again, I could see how like Hollywood types take to this movie and it becomes foundational for them, and they want to pay homage or that sort of thing.
The non-linear storytelling, I think, is the biggest thing. Everything from the trivia talks about Reservoir Dogs, but I think there's also Pulp Fiction, Memento.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons.
And honestly, any kind of time travel
backwards, but
it's like
but it's still
linear.
non-linear. Well.
Right.
I think isn't it linear where it moves towards the middle?
No.
No, there's no.
Well, Memento does.
Memento.
It does?
Memento.
Yeah. I thought it just
been a long time since I've seen it, but basically, most of the action plays backwards, but then it's interstitched with scenes that are moving forwards through time. Yeah. And then once you finally get to the end, it's the start of a loop or the end of a loop, depending on your perspective. But that might be where you interpret it as being the middle, because the story's not finished yet. It's about to start the next loop.
Okay, yeah.
Or the first
right.
loop.
It's just Yeah, but see, that's a non-linear, whatever you call it, that I had absolutely no trouble understanding as I was going through it. Versus this one is just like, I got, what's happening? Is the stream broken? Do I have to go find another thing? Because it didn't have any form of highlighting that it was going to show from different perspectives until it did.
I think that kind of bold choice is ballsy, and I appreciate it. Like, it forces you to interact with it as a movie,
and
it
especially
uses
if it was
it's
one of the first
inventing
ones that ever did it.
and not just that, but it's forcing the viewer to be an active participant in that. I think that pays off with that closing shot where you don't see the gunman approach the guy. You see the gunman approach you, the viewer. You have taken the place in your perspective. You're taking the place of Johnny. You're thinking of Sheriff as Johnny, is rooting for him. He's your perspective character, and then the police are going to approach you. And I think the other movie I thought we might do, the one that's a bit more about voyeurism, does a similar thing where you take the perspective of that character so much that it almost becomes about your participation in the movie as a viewer, and your approach to that kind of your approach to the film, I think, and your participation in the film is what really sells it. And if that didn't fire, that didn't fire. But it's one of the reasons I consider it a perfect movie, and I understand there's disagreements. So
doesn't have nearly enough laser swords and blasters for me. So, or face-eating monsters, or like I tell you what, like the sort of shit that I would enjoy, like for that sort of thing, is remake The Killing with like a twist on it like that, right? Where it's just like you do have the time traveling murder bot in the background, or you've got I don't know.
I mean,
Slither comes
I would
to mind.
probably
Slither is
enjoy
not
this
a great
movie being
movie.
redone. Like if they did it with modern technology to make it still set in the 19 whatever 50 40 whatever, but with modern technology to make that feel better, like that would have been fun.
Yeah, I didn't see a wasted moment. I thought it was fascinating seeing the thing unfold.
See, on that point,
so much you're not told, and you have to figure it out as the movie's going on. Anyway,
there were weird amount of times when things just took a little bit too long, and I didn't know why. Like, I did not need to see the old man struggling to put a whole bunch of money in a laundry basket for 2 minutes, or it felt like 2 minutes. It felt like way too long for just watching an old guy shuffle money badly into a bag. And I was like, why are you letting all of the money fall to the floor, you moron? And then when trying to put the money from the bag into the suitcase and the money's flying all right, it's like, I cannot handle it. If you just sorted it, it would fit better.
Right.
Well, he might be caught at any time. He might be caught at any time, and you should be.
I get that.
I think that's the level you should be thinking of it.
But it's
I think that's what we're trying to do.
When Johnny was doing it, it was kind of annoying. But when we're just watching the old guy shuffle money, like he had a box of the money unrestrained, and then he just poured it in, and it just fell all over the floor. Is like, I don't need that. And there's just other things that just felt like they took a little bit too long at any one scene. So maybe this is the effect of having watched all these fast-paced action movies that I've just been accustomed to things taking less time. But I did get the impression that like there was too much spent in places I didn't care about.
I think there's fair to say it did take a lot of time. I think it's fair to say that those were elongated. The idea is that it's supposed to be like a tearing and a tension and a pulling and a stretching. And you're supposed to be feeling that stretching, like you're stretching your muscle just a bit too much, and it starts to hurt, and then it moves on to the next thing. I think that's the way tension is supposed to work in this movie, is that some things that should only take a little bit of time or should be precise take a little bit too long and are a little bit imprecise and a little bit messy. That more than you want. Right. You don't want things to be messy. It's sort of like seeing somebody, cut a square out of a pie. That's not how you're supposed to cut pie, or
that would be infuriating.
you break a pencil in half, but it's not really in half, right? But that sort of infuriating thing to watch is what you're supposed to get in the movie, I think. I don't know.
And I did catch that. I mean, especially with the interactions with the parking attendant, right? There was tons of that, especially when he first shows up and he's just shooting the shit and being friendly and I've got a bum leg and I need to go see the thing. And there was another scene from one of the other characters that was even more minor, but I was like, everything is so on a schedule. Is this small talk built into the schedule, or are you falling behind right now? And so there was definitely some instances where there were organic interactions, but I was like, they're really falling behind. Maybe it was the dude talking to his sick wife or something along those lines.
I had mixed feelings about that point of like, on one side, I don't care why he's doing this. On the other side, the interaction was cute. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I kind of liked it, but I also felt like it was unneeded.
It was humanizing these guys, right? Like
It
they're
was,
they're
and
not gangsters. They're not, they're not evil dudes. They're just trying to steal some money that shouldn't hurt anybody so that they can get better lives for themselves, I think. And that might be where it starts to like undermine the morality a little bit and you start to root for them, right?
Yeah,
because
so-
from a pure play perspective, they are the villains in this movie.
Yeah, the motivations, you have Johnny who just figures, if I'm going to go to jail, I'm going to do it for a big score. So I'm going to basically gambling my life, right? You have the guy with a horrible wife just trying to get his wife to like him. You have the guy with the sick wife trying to take care of her. You have the underappreciated cop who's just a dirty cop. And all of these things work together, I think, pretty well.
And the Russian who just wants to fight somebody?
Well, the Russian. I think the Russian who could use the cash.
Maybe. I've been waiting to bring him up because
he works at a checkers and chess parlor where you pay by the hour to play checkers and chess with people.
Right.
So
he's the real hero of the story, right? Like,
away.
I'm sorry to come out here and promote Russia and that sort of thing, but come on. He's the only guy who doesn't wind up dead as near as we can tell. At most, he's supposedly going to spend 60 days in jail for his $1,500 for assault charges, right? Maybe he gets made in the after scenes where like Johnny turns on him or something like that or whatever. But the dude fought off like 10 cops. Like, even at the end, they fully got him manhandled, and they still can't control him.
That was a good point.
Because he's Russian Bear!
Which is great!
I did enjoy the fight scene in the bar because, like, I don't think they had stunt people the way that we do now. So some of those impacts would have really hurt. Like, they threw him against the bar at one point, and I could just imagine how much that would hurt with your back landing on it. And like some of that, like combat looked really real. Yeah,
and you're thinking he's done, and then it's like, nope, he's still gonna fight. So
when he loses his shirt and like his back is just covered with hair, like, oh my gosh.
I would bet dollars to donuts though that I think they almost certainly use, because this not just as this primitive film, but this is when film is still basically until Spielberg. Movies are going to be recorded stage plays is how they're approached. Alfred Hitchcock makes a comment to this effect that Spielberg is the first one who doesn't treat film like a stage play. So I have a feeling that it was meant to look convincing because these are people who have practiced this on stage with stage fights. Yeah. Melodrama has been doing this for 100 years.
And that fight scene was believable. It was well done. I enjoyed and appreciated how complicated it might have been at the time, especially like with that less padding, less worry about injuries. So if they were able to do that so well, why did they not just put ketchup on the dude if he was shot to death? I just like the contrast right there.
I think this era of storytelling is much more about actors and how they deliver lines than it is about what you do post processing and what you do in terms of editing. This is very experimental in terms of editing, but what you do in terms of behind the camera, or you're basically have in-camera effects or nothing at all. You can have post processing. So I have a feeling that it's as much a function of the time that it looked so good. But you think how good fight scenes look nowadays when there's not the camera cutting all over the place. When you just have a still shot, and it's a fight scene like the Daredevil fight scene everyone talks about in that show, right? That the restraint there is what people praise, but the restraint is basically what you're stuck with when you have these older movies. You can have a big wide shot of somebody swinging in on a vine. There's going to be a harness, but it's still a guy swinging in on a vine. Anyway, so I think there's something to be said for the era. It's not just primitive camera effects. It's very advanced choreography, and everyone's a trained professional in this. I think this movie benefited from that kind of expertise.
When they put in that much effort of like everyone is trained and like they're professionals doing what professionals do, that is still enjoyable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that with
one of the things I think this movie did go well with, like the professionals doing what they're good at, of like the actors brought these characters to life in ways that I appreciated. It was really it was the editing that made it not good for me.
Okay. That's one of the facets. I thought it worked once I was. It took me a while to actually although I suggested this movie, it took about 20 minutes for me to get engaged in the movie too, because I was like, oh, these characters are a bit over the top, and they're so smarmy and horrible. And then when it started cutting back and gave me different perspectives, it was really fascinating for me to try to figure out the puzzle and put it together. Like if you've ever seen Rashomon, Kurosawa.
I haven't.
It's a similar thing where you have the same event played from multiple perspectives. Only in this movie, it's the same time frame with different events going on at the same time. But that's another. It probably won't be my pick from Kurosawa if I choose a Kurosawa in 3 months or whatever. But
it's not that long between movies, is it, for you?
Oh, I don't know. After this one, it might be.
Yeah, I was like, it hasn't been that long since Shadow of a Doubt, has it? Like, maybe a month and a half, 2 months, so only a little hyperbole. So.
Well, I think, director, it sounds like you might have talked yourself into liking the movie, because you've been very positive about it for the last 20 minutes.
Like, there's things that I can like about it and things that I can dislike about it, and I can just enjoy the good and ignore the bad, but the bad was still there. I was bored for like the first third of the movie until the setup was boring.
Two very important parts that I'm getting from the director. First of all, it was boring. And second of all, there was not nearly enough blood for the blood god. All right. So she just like a 9 body count was just not enough. Counting the horse, she needed more. So
right.
So speaking of that, I think it's kind of interesting that this is kind of a prequel to Black Widow a little bit, because I can totally see Maurice go on to fight Captain America in about 30 years. So once he gets out of prison and he just in the 1980s. No, sorry. Yeah, this is the sort of shit humor that I have with the wife, where it's like we're watching a movie and then I tie like 2 random ass things together, Was it David Harbour, whatever? Yeah, right.
You're saying that's David Harbour's character?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, he's changed his name to Alexei to protect the innocent, but
sure.
So yeah, Soviet Bear. There's the only one. So, or maybe he's his dad, right? 30 years is enough for him to have a kid and grow up. So,
that was a movie that was a little bit better than I thought it would be, Black Widow, but it's still kind of it's sort of like having a new flavor of M&M. I still think it's still pretty much what I expected, but it was
M&Ms were perfected when they put a peanut inside it.
My wife would agree with you.
I mean, I love me some peanut M&Ms, but I think I like the crispy ones better. So,
just a plain M&M for me. Just buy the handful.
The minis
half cup at a
for
time.
sure.
Oh, half cup at a time.
Minis can be fun, but they just don't top the peanut M&Ms.
We should have a taste test of all the different varieties of M&Ms.
Now we're doing this 20. Now in 2 weeks. What is the perfect M&M? That's going to be our next topic. We're going to fight about it. So, I think the green one's the best. Just kidding.
I remember when blue came out. We had a whole thing in elementary school where we made we opened up packages of M&Ms and had to count the colors, and then we made bar graphs out of the proportion. And some people got really lucky.
You are a nerd. Oh my god!
This was school.
It wasn't where it wasn't where I thought it was going, but it's definitely a standard elementary school. Like, we're doing this for fun because the teacher's going to give you candy, but also make it educational.
Okay, if it was teacher imposed,
this is when you also had light brown and dark brown as distinct colors. Yeah, so they don't have those anymore. It makes me very sad. I can't have the same anecdote.
That's because they're racist, Ben. Like, getting excited about light and dark browns, they're just all M&Ms now.
We're only 45 minutes in, but we're going to get canceled if you keep
We made it past 30 seconds. We're good. So,
yeah. No one watches beyond that point.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh no! If you're watching, please tell us you love us.
You want to know what's worse than listening? Worse than watching your movie, Ben? Listening to us talk about your movie. That's what's worse.
And I will say, when it comes to this movie, since the last one we were talking about, like The Martian, we're talking about tension. I thought this would be a great example of tension, but all the parts that I thought were tense were just boring for the directors. I was like, I guess it's not really the it didn't really follow as well as I thought it would.
So
I'm
I
not
would
trying to
agree
just
that
pick movies.
the moment of when the suitcase is on the conveyor belt, it's like,
Yeah.
that's like, oh, what's going to happen? Because this thing is a piece of shit. And something that's going to
You didn't
happen.
plan on it.
But
yeah.
sure, like that was a moment that we can agree was tense. But like the setup of going around to everybody, here, I give you a chunk of money and you do this. It's just like, because either they're showing it and it's going to work fine, or they're showing it and everything's going to get bad. But they could just, if they're already going to rely on the narrator, then use the narrator to cut out some of that shit. And then it's like, he's supposed to do this thing at this time, and here's where he fucks up. That could have been, I don't know, just like concise.
See, modern retelling, like we got to get like some great or snarky narrator, be like, or even better, let's do freeze frame the movie, but with the killing, be like, you've got Johnny there running from the police, and be like, you're probably wondering how I found myself in this situation. So,
oh no. Well, I just keep thinking of this movie. What if it were edited like Ocean's 11, and I just get feeling sick to my stomach because this movie is so quiet, and it is slow, and it's building it up, and Ocean's 11 is like, we got the split frame and the animation and like the snarky comment, and I don't want to make this a Marvel movie. I like it the way it is. Don't make everyone a jokester. Like all these people are pretty horrible, except the one guy who loves his wife. Everyone else is pretty much horrible.
There's 2 guys that love their wife. I could live that. Well, I guess 3.
I guess Johnny's
everyone who had a woman loved the woman.
Oh, that's true. Well,
it's just
Johnny had a good woman, and the bartender had a good woman, and the schmuck had a just horrible gold digger.
I mean, yes, she was a horrible wife, but he loved her, so that's a good point for him and a fault for her, I guess.
That poor man. Oh. Yeah, that's kind of the classic. I guess we saw both or all 3 classic female characters in noir. You know, the dying tragic woman, the doe-eyed
noir.
Yeah, oh yeah, the doe-eyed innocent one, and then like the conniving femme fatale.
Please, Johnny, don't leave me. I'm not too smart, not too pretty to do anything else. Like, she was just completely, like, she literally said those words.
No, she says, like, I'm not smart enough or pretty enough to do anything. It's like, you are a gorgeous woman. What are you talking about?
Well, like, I think, you know, in an age where we're all talking about anxieties and body positivity, this is an age without that, with a lot of, you know, even if you're gorgeous, you'll still worry about being ugly. And in any era with beauty magazines is going to have people who say that sort of thing and shouldn't.
Okay, everybody can have their own anxieties, but you can also admit that, like, she could say, I'm not smart enough to make it in the world alone. Okay. That can be fine. But when a runway model says, I'm not pretty enough, it's like, what are you talking about?
I don't know.
You need someone to smack some sense into you.
Have you known runway models? I don't know. I've known a couple models, and they've been really anxious about how they look. That's why you have bulimia.
Yes, and when their career is depending on it, it's a different thing. It's like, I don't have the career skill to be able to survive, but like,
I think you're right that
like
she's
30
gorgeous.
or 40 years from strong female characters, right? Ripley's the first one, isn't she? So no power loaders and fighting.
Well, the femme fatale was like, well, she was fine. I just like could you? I expect her to do more shit to interfere.
Right.
This is a movie about small, subtle, unplanned intrusions ruining everything, and I figure the smallness is fine. But I think that it's fine for a character or a person who is gorgeous to say I'm hideous or I'm so ugly or I'm not pretty enough, and I think that's fine, not because it's good, but because it's true to life. I don't have an issue with that in terms of verisimilitude. I think people do that all the time.
So it does seem to be like a generational difference of a woman thinking that she needs to be pretty to survive, because now you just get a job whether you're ugly or not. So I think looks don't matter as much.
I think I think the word has just become the word sexy instead. I don't know. I think there's an obsession about being sexy or sexually attractive.
So everyone wants to be attractive. The wanting to be attractive is universal. It's going to be there. It's going to be affecting women for forever. It's going to be affecting everybody for forever. That's fine. There's just less of a need of like, you cannot survive in a world without being pretty, because I mean, this was a time when he said, you're going to get married, so you're going to quit your job. And that doesn't happen anymore. So her concerns might be very different than as I view them, because I'm viewing them 60 years later,
Sure.
70 years later.
I think if you can't be smart, be pretty. If you can't be well, it's sort of like that advice. If you what was it? Whoever
I'm
it was,
defending your movie right here. What is happening?
I know. I'm just. What was it? If you can't be good looking, at least be handy, or something like that.
Oh
But,
yeah.
you know,
if you're not handsome,
at least be handy.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So
I thought you were going somewhere else. I was going to quote Abe Lincoln, like whatever you are, be a good one. But so
sure.
Al Green's good too. So
yeah, that's what it was. Al Green. I almost said Red Skelton. I was like, no, it's a different color. Okay.
Right.
Oh, now here's a great movie.
Huh.
Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Yeah, we said thinking about people named Red.
Fair enough. I was like, that's a hell of a segue, but
Yeah.
Red. Anyway. Yeah, I just saw that again. I just saw Shawshank Redemption again recently. There's a lot more violence and despair in that movie than I remember. And a lot more gang rape. Like, it's explicit that Andy doesn't always succeed at beating the people off. I thought, well, I should have said that differently. I thought that he was always successful at getting them away by just hitting them with sticks or something. But I listened to the narration a little bit more closely this time. It's really depressing. It goes on for like an hour and a half. All I can think of when I think of that movie is the triumphant ending and Zawatsuneho and Red was here. But I don't think about the first hour and a half where it's just horrible, horrible circumstance after horrible, horrible circumstance. It's a very sad movie. Until the ending. You guys have seen Shawshank Redemption, right?
Yes. I just
oh, okay.
I guess I don't remember.
He was reborn in shit. So
yeah. I don't quite remember all of the bad things happening to the main character. There was that other kid that got killed. I remember it, like those things,
sure.
But not. I guess I don't remember gang rape that much. It's true.
No, I think
those
that
defensive things you're not supposed to.
the killing of that kid, I think is also a thing you're meant to understand is affecting Tim Robbins' character. Right, so that's still a thing that happens to Tim Robbins, but it's also a thing that happens to that poor kid.
Yes, it's like because that kid was hopeful, and now you have no reason to be hopeful.
Right, and he's there's a chance of getting Andy out legally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well. Then maybe if you want to, do you want to use that as your pick, Justin?
What, Shawshank Redemption?
Or are you going
not
to go
nearly
for
enough lasers?
Not nearly enough lasers.
I mean, Shawshank is really good, but yeah, and I've rewatched it a few times and whatnot, but I don't necessarily get into the movies that are like characters for character's sake, right? Like I'm really at the end of the day, right? I much more embrace, when you're talking about like, man versus man, man versus himself, man versus nature, that sort of thing. Like I'm looking for, what stuff really, really resonates me is having the common man like way out of his depth, right? And that's what draws me, for example, to like Cthulhu and a lot of horror shit, right? And so like just having people being shitty to each other is not at all enjoyable to me, because a lot of my media consumption is escapism, right? And I own that completely, right? So watching a heist movie is fun because I want to figure out how they do it. So I get lost in the planning and I get lost in the mechanics and sometimes the element of chaos, like what we saw here. So like those were parts that I found generally enjoyable. They weren't enough in this movie. They didn't carry it for me enough. Ocean's 11 is way over the top. Like I don't like the heist movies and shit or Fast and the Furious or whatever, where it's pure play fantasy, right? Where it's just like, well, I'm going to shoot the cable on the elevator and ride it to the top because, I'm not going to pancake myself at the top or any of that stuff. It kind of depends, because it's like there is a genre where that's acceptable, right? Superhero movies and shit like that get away with it. But like Mission Impossible and some of the other heist movies we have are a little Like they're all normal and they're all doing this thing, and then we got Tom Cruise hanging out of an airplane, or something ridiculous there. But as far as like just regular Joes coming up against the supernatural, for instance, like Cabin in the Woods is a great, like you want to talk about a perfect movie. Sorry, Joss Whedon, but you want to talk about something along those lines. It at least perfectly encapsulates that sense where it's like, yes, there are normal people being shitty to each other, but not just because they're shitty people, because there is an existential reason, or you also see the kids having to deal with these crazy situations and whatever. But yeah, like Shawshank is just like, like, I mean, it's like 1984, right? If you want to know the future of humanity, just imagine a boot stamping on the face of humanity forever. Nah, thanks. I know that's coming. Like, let's just skip that. like that's. I'll go turn on the news if I want to see something like that. I think that's where I don't quite get into it. Green Mile, right? Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, both absolutely fucking fantastic, right? For very similar reasons, but they're not like,
with a very similar.
I can't wait
Frank
to get
Darabont behind both.
Yeah,
Frank Darabont behind both. Yeah.
Right. And The Mist, just saying.
And season 1 of The Walking Dead, and that
right?
I should say, and the good season of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, he really set up the show for success because he brought so many of the actors and actresses with him. That people don't understand that at times.
People wanted to work with him. They worked below cost because just as a personal favor and a friendship with the guy. But anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, yes. So he's definitely one of my favorites. Like I should see what he's been up to lately and that sort of thing. But anyway, so like stuff like that, right? And like I said, part of it's escapism, part of it is just like, wanting to see the triumph of man or something like that sort of thing. And it's much easier to paint like a black and white picture where, we don't have to worry about trying to redeem the monster on the other end of it, right? Like you've got, when people are being bad people, like your compassion should generally drive you to still try to want to stop them from doing that, to like rehabilitate them or whatever you want to say. But I don't know. Anyway, that's the sort of thing like where Goodfellas kind of loses me. A lot of the gangster shit, a lot of these other things, like they're just not escapist enough for me. All it is a documentary where they change the names to protect the innocent. At the end of the day, like Goodfellas was literally based off of a book written by a gangster, right? Like it's literally, like 2 steps removed from a documentary, so it's just like, that's not entertainment, that's educational, so.
Huh.
I don't know. Like, I mean, Wolf of Wall Street, again, beautifully executed. Like I'm just trying to demonstrate it's not necessarily like a genre thing. It's just, it doesn't hook me. So, yeah.
I wondered what you'd say about something that's really like fantastical. It's a Western. It's a bit gruesome, called Bone Tomahawk.
You talked about that before.
Yeah.
Have you? I mentioned it, I think.
Yeah.
Bone Tomahawk. Russell, was it? What's his face?
Isn't that the one that you put the warning of like, there's something really gruesome? Don't let the kids swing the wife around.
Oh yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Westerns can be good, depending on how they are. I would be excited to watch this movie a little bit, I guess, but
sure.
It doesn't necessarily get me away from what I've been talking about, right? Like, I think Tombstone is fantastic, but the things that I like about Tombstone, for example, are the things that you guys always rag on, which is the witty dialogue, right? You guys fucking hate witty dialogue for some reason.
I'm just tired of it.
Not everything's tired of it. Every time somebody is smart is amazing. Every time somebody's got one over you through wordplay or something like that, I love that shit. I eat it up every movie, every time, which is why I still love the Marvel movies. We're in between watching Age of Ultron right now. Are you kidding? That thing's got a quip a minute. Like it's always there. And I don't understand the disconnect where people are like, I don't like clever wordplay or sassy comments or something. That's my existence, I guess.
Everyone has the moment of, I wasn't clever enough right then. I didn't get to have the clever quip back at the person who was insulting me. And when I'm watching a character who is always perfect, always saying the cleverest, most wittiest thing, it pushes me out. It's like, someone's gonna fuck up somewhere. Why is there no one that's like just stumbling over their words, stuttering or anything? Like, it doesn't have to be all the time.
How do you like the Dresden Files?
because he does stutter once in a while. He doesn't have the right quip all the time. The other people
like on occasion
at him.
But...
Yeah, and once in a while he's just like, and he just makes noises and walk away. That's fine because that's what I do.
What's that movie? I want to say it's like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but there's like, is it Ryan Reynolds? Somebody, not Ryan Reynolds. What's his face? Punches through a window and then
Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer. I haven't seen it, but I was thinking maybe I should watch it soon.
Well, there's some movie, I think it might be that one, where somebody punches through a glass window to try to break in and get the thing, and then just slicing open his wrist and just has to go to the hospital.
Fucking hilarious.
Like that's the sort of thing I like to see. Where there's a lot of wit, there's a lot of very clever, witty things.
Right.
There's a lot of just stupid. Okay, here's something that I think everyone in this room would like: a Coen Brothers movie, because it's got that same dynamic. It's got some people who are just perfect and witty and hilarious, and some people just miserable and it's a great dynamic because there is the wit, but then there's also the things just didn't work out this time dynamic that's constant throughout Coen Brothers movies, like Oh Brother Where Art Thou, A Serious Man, Hail Caesar. You guys never seen these movies? Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
Yeah, that's been on the list, but it never pulled me in, and like. It really should, because like George Clooney's kind of like a goofball in that movie, isn't he? Like it's supposed to be pretty good, but I haven't, so not nearly enough lasers and face huggers for that one. Just kidding. So,
all right. I mean, are you trying to nominate something for next time, Ben?
No.
Okay.
It does kind of narrow it down to you and me, though, doesn't it? So
director, you can choose something.
Perfect
movie.
I don't know. At the moment, I'm in the mood for Chinatown, but I don't know.
Chinatown, yeah, sure. It's streaming.
So
for like
I've chosen something that he's excited about. How ominous is this?
Well, no, because I recognize I actually have it on one of my streaming services at the moment, but only until August 30th. Or August 31st. So I got to get on that.
So speaking of having multiples with the same name, which Chinatown are we talking about?
The one with Jack Nicholson, Roman Polanski.
The one by the I was going to make a comment about Roman Polanski, but
it's an interesting question.
Apparently, the other ones are like Bollywood movies, so that kind of I'm assuming that precludes them. So
yeah, it should be like 1978, I think, or somewhere in that realm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway.
That might be a bit. Faye Dunaway, wasn't she? No, Faye Ray. I'm thinking of, because there's a King Kong movie in the 70s, but Faye Ray was the King Kong from the 30s. No, but that's basically a documentary though, because it's about Los Angeles, how everyone is miserable. So I don't know if Justin would be into that.
Yeah, it's the stereotypical noir. It's Los Angeles, and everything is bright, and everyone is dying and miserable.
This is the oldest movie someone other than me has suggested.
It's true. I was flatly surprised that she would suggest something. That's why I was like, let's clarify. Maybe I'm misunderstanding.
No,
maybe it was
feeling
remade
noir right now.
Feeling noir now, huh?
Yeah. I want some noir.
Hey, nice.
So,
all right, then I'm going to make you guys watch The Shadow next. So
just as a personal recommendation, I'm curious what you think of Brick by Ryan Johnson from 2005.
What the fuck is this?
Brick?
It's by Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson, 2005, neo-noir. It's noir with high schoolers, and it's great.
Ew.
Oh, come on. No, it's great. Okay, well, you don't have to actually watch it.
High schoolers aren't a selling point.
It's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it. So
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It has.
Is that a selling point for you?
I will say all the actors are good. It's just set in a high school. They're not actually teenagers. It's set in a high school with like.
Well, obviously they're not teenagers. They're never teenagers in their high school. They're just going to act really.
It just looks like a teenager.
Well, a lot of great lines. Weird. It had a lot of weird dialogue. Okay, don't watch it then. Don't watch it. But Chinatown. Next time.
Maybe we should get into like a really bad stint where we do like Chinatown, then we do like Big Trouble in Little China, and then because that would be my kind of movie.
What, and then Bloodsport or something to continue the China thing?
Was Bloodsport around that?
It took place in
I mean,
China.
I was thinking like we could do like the Golden Child or something, right? You know, where there's like no China whatsoever, but you know, it kind of
In
counts.
1974, it's on Prime and Criterion.
All right.
Chinatown.
Well,
Nice.
good luck, everybody else. So,
All right, so we've got that
All right.
figured out, I guess.
This is
Some
what.
people
Wait,
are probably
wait.
going to
You're talking
complain
like
about
we
them.
already turned off the stream, and we totally haven't. This is the kind of conversation
It's a
to have
trap.
after the stream is off. And it's still on.
hold on.
Well,
Are people still watching?
Pretend to turn it off so we can hear all the bullshit that Ben's going to say on an open mic. So be like, oh, well, thank you guys for joining the show. Catch us in 2 weeks where we talk about Chinatown. Cut the mic so we can hear Ben.
Okay, I hit the button. It's out.
All right. So anyway, Ben, what do you really think about the movie?
Yeah.
In Chinatown or China or blinkety blink? Are you blinking
Oh,
Morse
no,
code? 'Cause I'm
I
not
just
really
said-
good at Morse code.
I'm just saying, I work at a job where I could get canceled. I'm not going to say nothing.
Good point.
Not even in a joke. I wouldn't have got nothing to say that would get me in trouble that I would say seriously. But even jokes, I'm not going to say.
But do beware of being canceled, I guess. Okay, fair enough.
It's
Yeah.
not very funny. We get it. So
Yeah,
I got a family to worry about.
yeah, right.
very true. All right, so Chinatown, I guess, and then Dresden next week for continuing the mirror,
Really?
whatever bullshit we're doing. I think
Episode 4
I don't know.
in the whatever the hell we call what.
I
we're
even
doing.
gave up on the numbers. I just like fuck it, whatever. Mirror.
Well,
All
sorry,
right.
yeah, part 4, episode 357.
Yeah. All right. Have fun.